Hey, I'm Cole.
I'm Kenyon.
I'm Kwame.
And I review bad self-help.
And we put it into our daily lives so you don't have to.
The book this week is Deepak Chopra's 20 Spiritual Lessons for Creating the Life You Want, The Way of the Wizard. Have you guys read any Deepak before?
I've heard of him.
You've read him?
I've heard of him. Indian, a lot of people take mushrooms and stuff are into him, right?
He's a very famous dude right now, and he's kind of popular with every middle-aged mom in America. And actually, my grandparents, they got into meditating.
I thought he was like a drug guy. I thought he's the guy who's telling people to take mushrooms and shit.
No, you're thinking of Terrence McKenna and other.
I thought he was part of that.
No. He's part of he's probably the figurehead of pseudoscience, New Ageism,
really?
Where a lot of what he says he claims to base on physics and other actual scientific things, but he'll just say stuff like, "What you need to do is visualize your own reality, and it'll come to be." And just kind of say a lot of Chinese jargon, and then middle-aged moms are like, "That's pretty much the truth."
What is he's Indian, right?
Yeah, he's Indian.
Deepak Chopra.
You got America, that? You got from the name.
He's from India, or he's from?
He's from India.
Okay.
And basically, he's a successful scam guru that kind of just parades pseudoscience.
How do you know?
No, my grandparents listened to it because they have he's on a meditation app with Oprah, and basically it'll be Oprah being like, I struggled in my life, and this is giving you tips on success. And it's well, you have $1 billion. So I think whatever, you just wake up every day and you're you know what, have $1 billion. And that really helps with, and then.
Just going through his also buy books, you have stuff like quantum healing.
Oh.
Which.
He's not getting people killed, is he?
No, he's not. It's not like ISIS, but it depends. It depends. It's almost as bad. It depends. What's worse, getting your head cut off or hearing a 27-year-old girl telling you can visualize your own reality and bring that into being?
But I'm saying quantum healing. He's not no, don't do cancer treatments. Take this crystal and then your grandma's dying.
He claims that consciousness and reality are all the he will just say nothing. Essentially,
people.
He has books also that are just called Perfect Weight, Restful Sleep.
You might be hurting that.
Perfect Digestion.
Because some of that pseudoscience, pseudo healing bullshit. People will be don't take your cancer treatments, and then your mom dies. Is he doing that?
I think it's more just on a day-to-day annoying
He may be. I didn't get that from.
Sounds like danger.
Yeah, it sounds dangerous. I didn't get that from this book, The Way of the Wizard. So he started from the teachings of Merlin and King Arthur.
What is the teachings of? Does Merlin have written teachings?
I guess.
Isn't he a fictional character?
He's a fictional character. There's a lot written on Merlin and King Arthur. So he pulls from those sources and comes up with 20 spiritual lessons.
But Merlin's not a real part. You can't.
Well, neither is a lot of fictional.
I could have been oh yeah, I wrote a book based on the teachings of Spider-Man. He's not a real.
Not only is Merlin not a real person, but he wrote the stories of Merlin in this book.
What do you mean?
His spiritual lessons are based on stories of Merlin that he wrote. So it's just his idea of Merlin. And then he writes these little parables that involve Merlin and King Arthur.
Okay. Wait, so he wrote Merlin fan fiction and then based spiritual lessons on it?
Yeah, basically.
And,
so he got the
I think we should Google how much money this guy has, because he may be a genius on the level of you should just be from Asia, just say just nonsensical spiritual things, and white people just believe that you're.
He addresses the Indian thing in a.
He addresses the Indian.
I like how we're well, does he say something about it, or am I supposed to just sit here and let this fucking
the controversy?
In part 1, entering the wizard's world, this is the opening of the book. He opens up. People want to know why I, who come from India, am so interested in wizards. My answer is this. In India, we still believe that wizards exist.
I think this book is set. This book is set. like relations between the West and the East back 40 years. And then why am I so in India we believe wizards exist and also we don't have indoor plumbing. Like that's like probably the most derogatory thing I can hear about India.
And he calls Merlin the greatest teacher in Western civilization. But he's basing that off because Merlin is the closest to, I guess, what he believes like
is a wizard.
Indian teaching art, which is kind of weird, right? To call like
he's not real. What do you mean the greatest teacher? He didn't exist.
But it's like someone going to India and being like, "Oh, that's your greatest thinker," because he believes closest to like what our like Western idea is. So he went to America or the Western civilization.
If their ideals include wizards, I really don't think that we should be using them as a scale of perfect. You know, on a 0 to wizards. If that's how you're judging ideals?
So that's how it opens. What are the lessons? What did you glean at?
What he calls a wizard, and he gets this from his living in India for a little bit. He says what is a wizard? A wizard can turn fear to joy, frustration to fulfillment. A wizard can turn the time-bound into the timeless.
That's what you're describing.
Well, it's also a wizard.
Spells.
His definition of a wizard is just an acid dealer for the most part. Turns frustration into joy. I'm like, yeah, that's Big Roy from down the block can turn that.
Yeah, so that's how he opens up what a wizard is, and then he says, "When I was growing up in India, I knew that all this was true." He met a lot of like old men in white robes and sandals that would come to his house and like preach this stuff. And so then he came over to Western civilization, and he found Merlin, who was the closest in teachings to what he grew up with.
Does he ever like go deeper into all these old men that came to his house?
Yeah, it sounds like
because I think does he believe in wizards because something horrific happened with the wizard? He's like, not only do I believe in wizards, but they still haunt me to this day on what they did on my 5th birthday when no one was listening.
Well, this is how he describes these.
They can turn an anus into a battlefield.
This is how he described those old men. He said they appeared to be very special creatures. They were completely at peace. They emanated joy and love. The wild ups and downs of everyday life seemed not to touch them at all.
They did seem to touch him a little bit, though. All right, so he's molested by a wizard. Anyway,
what are the best teachings that he has?
Oh, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
He has 20 lessons. This is
20
just an intro to like what his idea of wizards are. And then he goes and he says, in the West, a wizard is primarily thought to be a magician who practices alchemy, turning base metal into gold. He said, alchemy also exists in India. In fact, it was invented there. And he doesn't source anything. He just makes this really bold claim.
So if I believe him already, wizards and alchemy both are from India. That's just,
yeah.
no bibliography. Nothing's no.
Yeah. And you might know alchemy as like turning lead into gold or something, right? But he says we got it wrong because alchemy is actually turning human beings into gold. That's the basis of this book. Is a
worst sentence I've ever heard in my entire life.
Is a wizard practices alchemy, and that alchemy is turning us into.
Does he means that metaphorically,
yeah,
right? Like turning you into a better person.
Yeah. He really liked this idea of wizards, and so he said he approached this topic of turning human beings into gold through the teachings of the relationship between Merlin and Arthur in the Crystal Cave. And the Crystal Cave is this place of safety where a wise voice knows no fear, and the turmoil of the world cannot enter this crystal cave. And in this crystal cave, there's always been a wizard, and there will always be, and you only have to enter and listen. So this crystal cave is, I guess, inside of all of us. And inside and inside this crystal cave is a wizard in all of us that teaches these things that he's gonna talk about.
Should your grandparents are into this?
No, well, they're into
Your grandparents are walking around with this shit in their
They
head.
listen to a meditation app. Like they meditate, and in the beginning, Oprah comes in and says a couple of nonsensical things, and then Chopra runs in for about 10 minutes and just rambles about how you could visualize a future.
You describe him like a hype man or something. Like Oprah's doing all this stuff, and then Deepak runs in.
He does, though. They just have him do 10 minutes of, like, what you need to do is fear. It's just, and then, if you're really listening to what he's saying, he just says nothing. Like, he just manages to, that. I'm looking at the book you have right now. It's like, 300, 400 words?
Pages?
You said words? No, it's
it's about 160 pages.
160 pages? Yeah. So he's managed to fill 160 pages with, like, essentially nothing.
Yeah.
Like, and that's pretty much...
There's so many like nothing statements in this book. Like he's talking about like the first lesson. He gives you 5 statements about the wizard, and he says, "The wizard is beyond opposites of light and dark, good and evil, pleasure and pain. Everything the wizard sees has its roots in the unseen world. Nature reflects the moods of the wizard. The body and the mind may sleep, but the wizard is always awake. The wizard possesses the secret of immortality."
Nothing. Yeah. That's just you just said nothing. You're like, it's not in light or dark. It doesn't exist, but then it also exists, and it's beyond your comprehension. And then also, the end of that statement should go, "Ha ha ha! You paid $20. I just fucking
remember
got a new mortgage."
This wizard lives inside the crystal cave that's inside of you.
What kind of drugs is this man taking?
He gives a note before he goes into his lessons, and I think this is a note on political correctness or something. He says,
political correctness.
Yeah, he says, "Note: the wizard has no gender, and it's only the clumsiness of English that turns Merlin into a he. Wizardness is a clumsy word, so please know that wizard applies to women as well as men. If anything, the return of the magical has been greeted more quickly by women in our society than anyone else."
That's a little condescending to say.
Yeah, it was kind of a PC statement. And then you got to the last statement. He's like, "Actually, women are kind of silly."
Does this guy still have like 80 wives, though? Does that make up for his... Does that one little note make up for the fact that he had like fucking 3 slaves growing up? Here's the thing. We're on the first thing, which the wizard's beyond comprehension. So, okay. All right. What are the next things? What's some other... Maybe he's about to hit us with some truth that'll really change the way I see the world.
That was just an intro to the wizard, who he is, where he lives, where he comes from. And then we get to part 2, the wizard's way, which is the real meat of the book, and it's the 20 lessons that he made up involving Merlin and King Arthur. Before he gets into those, he goes a little into the story of Merlin and King Arthur, and it mostly sounds like I was reading the story, and it kind of just sounded like Merlin was kind of a dick. It starts off with saying, "The old man with the flowing white beard, Merlin, had claimed King Arthur, using his right to the royal baby only hours after it was born." So King Arthur was born to his mom, and then Merlin steps in. He's like, "I have the right to this baby," and he takes him to the crystal cave. So, and this is the wizard we're supposed to be learning.
Yeah, we want to be more like this guy. I can kind of see it from like you want to build your self-esteem to a point where you can confidently steal a baby. Where you are.
That's my right.
You're living in the moment, stealing that baby. That's.
Yeah, and
there's neither light nor dark.
He also doesn't have to answer any of the child services questions about whether or not he's taking care of his baby.
Laws do not apply to the wizard.
And like he talks about like King Arthur like going out into the world and stuff, and he says, Merlin gave his disciple a peculiar squinting look. "I'm sending you into the swamp, or as mortals call it, the world."
It's not even like a creative way to condescend. It's not even, or as mortals call it, the world. God, Christ's sake.
Yeah, so right now
this isn't even like a popular fairy tale. Like, this dude's gonna go from essentially like D-list fairy tale and claim that the most important lessons about life are from like essentially a failed sci-fi series from the medieval ages.
And they come from this this guy who just like steals babies, and so he gives us this story. Lesson 1. Here, Merlin said one day, thrusting a bowl of soup at the boy Arthur. Taste. Hesitantly, Arthur did. It was a delicious pottage of venison and wild roots, mysteriously spiced by Merlin when Arthur's back was turned. In fact, the soup was irresistibly good, and Arthur eagerly dipped his spoon again, only to have the bowl snatched from his hands. Wait more, he mumbled, his mouth still full. Merlin shook his head. The whole banquet is in the first spoonful, he admonished. At first, Arthur felt a surge of frustration and disappointment, but then he noticed that he felt as satisfied as if he'd eaten the whole thing. Later, when Arthur was dozing under a tree, Merlin quietly approached and left a large bowl of soup by his side. Walking away, the wizard muttered, "Just remember, what good would all those years of wizard school be if I couldn't show you everything in the first lesson?"
Wait, he says that?
Yeah.
Wizard school?
Yeah.
What wizard school?
So that was the whole first lesson. That was his story for
What
the
is
first.
the lesson? I don't.
Isn't it like delayed gratification, basically?
There's a section right after that called Understanding the Lesson. And it says, "It takes a lifetime to learn what the wizard has to teach. But everything that will unfold over years and decades is available in this first lesson. Here the wizard introduces himself. He describes his approach to life, which is to solve the deepest riddles of mortality and immortality. And all this happens in a magical way. For one thing, Merlin does not actually appear in physical form."
How the fuck could you read this book like with like an eviction? No. How the fuck could you read this book with like an eviction notice on your door and like 3 starving kids, and you're like, all right, the wizard doesn't appear in physical form. Like what is he actually saying? He is actually saying nothing. He's like immortality, mortality. It's like, what do I do to make her text me back today? You know what I mean? I'm looking for fucking rational results here.
Did you also get that from the first lesson, that forms are just irrelevant to him? Like,
he's not a girl, he's not a guy. He exists in between time and space. Merlin is Caitlyn Jenner, apparently. Merlin is the left's conversation about gender. But is he... Okay, if I'm just trying to play devil's advocate. Is he just trying to say like delayed gratification? Because that's like kind of a decent thing you could take in life.
No, you might think that right from that story, but nowhere
I like how you're like, hey, I see you with that rational thought over there, but no, that has no place in this book. You know, you might fuck off with that.
Yeah, nowhere does he say anything about delayed gratification, but he does explain himself in this paragraph that I'll try to get through. The first lesson then comes down to this: look beyond your limited self to see your unlimited self. Pierce the mask of mortality and find the wizard. He is inside you and only there. Once you find him, you will also be a seer. But what you can see dawns in its own time, step by step.
I think I'm going to call my grandparents. I'm going to call my grandparents and just, like, really have... Like, save them. I'm about to fly back on a direct flight and, like, break their iPhone with the app on it.
I was reading this. I'll be like, you...
So that's his summing up of the first lesson.
All right, so if we're trying to just decipher what he said, is he trying to say like the spiritual, like, you know, you got yourself right now who's not that great, but you know, potentially you could be a way better person if you tap in.
That is not what he said.
Listen, I am just trying to turn this nonsense into something. What are
you getting from it?
I don't know. I still don't understand.
I don't get the soup. What is the soup? Yeah.
I don't get the soup.
It's weirdly sexual at first too. He's like, he like spices it like when his back is turned.
Yeah,
dips his lips into the spoon. No more, he says.
Can you imagine if the next one's like, and then Bill Cosby came up with an aspiring actress and is like, if I couldn't show you everything in the first lesson, what good would 30 years of show business
the
be?
First lesson.
Like, what am I supposed to do next week? Visualize the seer within who exists but doesn't exist, is immortal and immortal.
I was going to take mushrooms.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to smoke DMT until I think this makes sense. I think that's pretty much the only way.
This lesson, you're supposed to just recognize that the wizard exists. But I still don't really get that from the soup thing. Like,
also
where is
don't-
he?
Getting
Also,
the
he's
story.
not very okay. So
Why does he sit under the tree? Why does he sit under the tree? Why does he give him soup? The story and what he says to explain, they're completely disconnected.
Yeah,
So,
They don't relate
it's
to each
also
other at
okay.
all.
So I'm just desperate.
and also he wrote these stories, so it's not like he's just pulling them from. Like, he could explain a little bit more in the story.
He's writing his own stories and then
Yeah.
be like, this is my interpretation of what
I just
said.
wrote, and yeah.
Yeah, he's just smoking DMT, writes a story, and then he wakes up the next day and he's like, all right, how would a sober person view this?
So next week I got to just acknowledge wizards exist. I
Yeah.
just got to wake up every day with the knowledge that hey, there's wizards out there, and they,
Yeah,
Indians
and he
believe
has
them.
and,
he has
and they go by the they pronoun.
and you got to
that's-
recognize that the wizard has a different viewpoint than you. It's not it's not based on emotions. It's not based on
It's
logic.
reasonable.
It's just like I see an enemy
Floating
reacting. It's like, yeah, I guess your id or whatever the like base reaction is that you have. That's the wizard, and then we put all these other things on top of it that
Well, that's kind of, I mean, you can get something from that. That's not.
you're getting something out of something that I'm putting on
Yeah,
top
yeah,
of.
I mean, it's-
I'm trying to make sense.
This is Cole's lesson.
It's
This is-
filtered through 4 different layers.
I'm not reading King Arthur fucking crying about how I'm gonna now I know how to get a new job or whatever.
Yeah. So the first lesson, recognize that the wizard exists. It's going to be good for both of you this next week, just to know he's out there.
He's out there.
And then lesson 2, basically it's about labels, I guess. Wizards often do not know names for the most ordinary things like oak trees, deer, or constellations. However, a wizard could look at a gnarled oak, a feeding doe, or the night sky for hours, and every moment of his contemplation would be all-absorbing. So the wizard basically strips all context from things, all labels, and sees them for what they are. I guess. I don't know. So every time
The wizard does not see color, and the wizard is Liz from accounting, who's gonna say that nonsense. to
every
me.
time he sees a deer, he does not know it's a deer. He doesn't
I
know
think the
anything.
wizard's just a guy on a heavy amount of mushrooms, where he does not know. He does not know how to get home or where he is, or the fact that
The
he's
wizard does
covered in
not
clothes.
see.
The wizard does not have labels or respect. He doesn't. This doesn't. I acknowledge wizards exist because it's just my cousin who we are all worried about. And he doesn't self-reflect. He doesn't know labels. Okay, he really doesn't even know the name for how.
the
He doesn't
wizard.
have
The wizard does not acknowledge rent, and the wizard does not believe in a phone bill. So the wizard, your
The wizard's
labels
just a
are,
terrible human being that we all know. That
your labels do not fit.
it's such
my
a
world.
garbage. Hey, maybe, hey, dude, you've thought about getting a job. I'm not really into that self-reflection, ego garbage that Western society is plagued with.
And there's just more I don't know, in this lesson there's just more examples of the wizard being a garbage person. Like I was reading, this is just ridiculous, but one time Arthur was scared out of his wits when Merlin ran around brandishing a huge butcher's knife like a madman. "What are you doing?" the boy asked in terror. "Thinking," Merlin replied. "Don't you think this way?" "No." Just wait. Just wait. "No," Arthur said. Merlin suddenly stopped. "Ah, then I must be mistaken. My impression was that all mortals use their minds like knives, cutting and dissecting. I wanted to see if that was like. If I may say so, there's a good deal of violence in what you mortalities call rationality." Merlin knows humans don't walk around with knives and running. Apparently, for someone who knows everything,
So it just sounds like a tale of child abuse. John Moray. My dad used to run around with knives. He's like, "Don't you think this way? Doesn't it hurt to think like this?" And then stab me or whatever. Yeah.
So he runs around. Wait. So in this lesson, he runs around with it. He's just running around holding the knife.
yeah, he's just going like this.
Well,
he's
the
just
whole
moving the
book
knife
is-
back
the whole
and forth.
book is shitty, pretentious metaphors. So that's trying to be like, he's literally like, "Well, see, that's how you think all the time because
No.
you're all aggressive and sharp and dissecting and
But-
judging."
But the wizard, like this is a weird path because the wizard obviously if he's a wizard, he obviously knows that like humans don't do that. He was just doing that, waiting for Arthur to ask him what he's doing, just so he could like make a fool out of Arthur, like making
He's an asshole. He's like a
It's just the level of pseudo spiritual nonsense that he is peddling is like, it's felony possession of bullshit. That's all this book is.
This book has made me just like really kind of just like feel sorry for King Arthur too. like he was stolen from his mom as a baby.
I forgot how to get home. Well, you should have looked under a rock because it would have told you who you are. You can forget who you are because you're about his work. You're about
Merlin is very much the alcoholic stepdad who won the custody battle somehow. Get close to the knife. Get over here. Stop running and get closer to the knife.
Yeah, let me just fix you this porridge, but I'll turn my back and put some secret spices in here.
Feeding him mushrooms when he's like 11. It's good, right? It's good porridge.
All right, so I'm gonna go over just a couple more lessons.
If we can take it, for crying, I'm gonna have a culinary stroke.
I had to read 20 of these things, and so you can take about 5 of them.
Would you rather read all 20 of these lessons, Kenan, or be literally crucified?
So this is lesson 4, and the header is "Who am I?" is the only question worth asking and the only one never answered. Merlin disappeared from Arthur's world for many years. Then one day he suddenly reappeared, walking out of the forest and up to Camelot. Overjoyed to see his master, King Arthur ordered a royal banquet in his honor, but Merlin acted bewildered, looking at his former pupil as if he had never seen him before. "Perhaps I might attend if you are who I take you to be," Merlin said. "But tell me truly, who are you?" Arthur was astonished. Before he could protest, Merlin addressed the assembled court, saying loudly, "I shall offer this bag of gold dust to anyone who can tell me who this person is." Then a young page ventured, "We all know this is the king." Merlin shook his head and dismissed the page from the hall. "Don't any of you know who this is?" he repeated. "It is Arthur," another voice called. "Even a fool knows that." Merlin spotted where the voice came from, an old serving maid in the corner, and ordered her from the room too. Eventually, his wife herself was drawn in. "This is my beloved husband," she murmured. Merlin only shook his head. One by one, each person was dismissed until no one remained in the hall but the wizard and the king. "Merlin, you have confused us all," Arthur admitted, "but I am sure I know who I am. Therefore, my answer is this. I am your old friend and disciple." After the briefest of hesitations, Merlin dismissed this last answer, as he had all the others, and the king himself had no choice but to leave. Curiosity, however, led him to an open door from which he could still see into the great hall. To his surprise, he watched Merlin walk over to the windows, open the gold purse, and fling the gold dust into the air. "Why did you throw away the precious gold?" Arthur called out, unable to contain himself. Merlin looked up. "I had to," he replied. "The wind told me who you are." "The wind? But it didn't say anything." "Exactly."
I literally don't know if I have the will for you to read another 2 of these. The level of pseudoscience bullshit. He just said nothing. Just the wind. The wind didn't say anything. Exactly. What?
Yeah, so to recap the story, he goes to visit King Arthur. He pretends he doesn't recognize him at all. He banishes everyone from his hall, and then he throws his gold out into the wind.
He says the wind. So what is the lesson? Well, there's then an explanation, right?
You know, I was trying to pretend there's an objective thing you can pull from it, and all it is Deepak Chopra is an evil man. That you'll just be at the last page of the book, and it's like, I know there's no actual suitable, even non sensible life advice in this book. ... Exactly. And that's all it is. That one line told you the entire book, which is there's nothing going on here. Exactly. The point, this book should inspire you that you can write a whole 200-page pseudo-nonsense book, sell it to idiots, and become a millionaire. That's I'm motivated to do. Is just paint my face brown.
Imagine
start saying parables about a guy from the Middle Ages and become a millionaire.
Imagine just Deepak like writing this, like how content he was with this. Like
he's like, exactly. He probably, dude.
The wind told you nothing.
I gotta go tell the other guy. Do you think he was?
I can't imagine someone sitting like you're an editor and you're reading through like you want to keep that. You want to keep that part in?
I think he was writing this, and everyone he was with was on the floor violently laughing. And then he's like, and then I'm going to write exactly. And then he sits there. I imagine him sitting there with Ellen, just trying to keep it together. He's like, when I was a kid, I was visited by a lot of... These people are dumb as Christ.
Well, look, I can interpret the lesson. What he's saying is that you don't know who you are. And none of us know who you are. And you can't ascribe labels... And especially what he says in the lesson before that, with the water or whatever, you can't ascribe labels to things. That's what it is. He's saying you can't. You think you know who Kenan is, but you only know your perception of Kenan. You don't really know your true self.
I know I'm a man who hates this book. I know I'm a man. I don't really know who I am, but I know I'm not whatever that garbage is.
Why don't you pop open the window for a second? Ask the wind who this man is.
You about to get like pulled over and you're like, I'm gonna need a name and address. So like, we're gonna have to wait for the wind.
Ask the wind officer.
Yeah.
It's not saying anything. Exactly. A man was murdered 87 times today.
Yeah, so he says, understanding the lesson. Says, wizards have been content to remain nameless and placeless. They do not like to stay in any one locale where mortals might become familiar. Whoever calls my name is a stranger, Merlin said. You recognizing my face doesn't mean you know me. And it's something to do with names and stuff still.
You say they don't stay in one location?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
I don't know if wizards are supposed to be... Because he
See, I'm trying to say it's a metaphor, but then he also talks about it like it's a legitimate thing.
Like these wizards are real.
This cannot be a metaphor because he's talking about... He's really naming some properties.
He says like literal... Yeah, he says wizards do not stay in one place. Lest mortals find their what are you, Walter White?
He's like, you're recognizing my face doesn't mean you know me.
Wizards.
This sounds like
wizards make sure
this all just sounds like a deadbeat dad.
Yeah, I know.
Just because you recognize my name, my face, doesn't mean I'm your dad. Doesn't mean I have to pay child support.
I don't like to stay when you get too familiar with me. That's when I leave.
Wizards move from place to place, dodging child support.
Wizard doesn't go back to Tennessee after the incident in ¡94, and he doesn't go back to Tampa, Florida after the incident in 2005.
Susan
Wizard stays on the move. Less credit card fraud to catch up to him.
Yeah. And so he describes like the difference between wizards and mortals, I guess, with names. He says, having a name is useful. It lets you know which birth certificate is yours. That's his only useful thing he says about having a name. Knowing which birth certificate is yours. And then he says, but it quickly turns into a limitation. Your name is a label. It defines you as having been born at such and such a time and place to a certain set of parents. After a few years, your name defines you as going to such in your school and to go on in such a profession. By the time you are 30, your identity is hemmed in by a box of words. The walls of the box might consist of the following: Catholic tax lawyer, educated at Cornell, married with 3 children and a mortgage. And so yeah, it feels like it's just more stuff on like names and labels and...
I mean, there's some truth that like, yeah, you don't want to... Like anyone who I think labels himself pretty hard is kind of a boring, unimaginative person.
Yeah, but
like
he goes...
You're like, oh, I'm a...
He goes a step beyond this and says that many of these limitations and labels pertain to you when in fact they only pertain to your body. And you are far more than your body.
For Christ's sake. I just keep trying to give him an inch, and I'm like, yeah, it's true. You don't want to be like, you don't want to limit yourself and label yourself. He's like, you don't want to limit yourself because you are a ghost wizard who is not just your body, but a mist that emanates. Jesus Christ.
He talks about bodies and homes, and he says, Merlin did not consider himself homeless, however. He said, this body is like a roost that my thoughts come home to, but they fly in and out so fast that you might as well say they live in the air. Again, we assume that thoughts come and go inside their heads, but we cannot prove it. Who has seen a thought before it arises? Who follows a thought whenever it chances to go next?
What is that? What does that mean?
This is the part where he's talking about your body.
And what is he saying? He's saying your like your physical shell is not as like your mind is more than that.
No, it's like you gotta. So to understand Deepak Chopra again, it's just essentially like like fake Gucci shoes. This is basically like rip off Gucci Buddhism, where he's basically trying to be like there's no ego, you're just pure consciousness, and your body's like. There's this garbage phrase you'll hear that you are the universe experiencing itself. And so that's what they try to say.
I've heard that phrase before.
It's a pretty popular one in these circles. So it's they try to say like, oh, well, you're just like this. This is your meat shell, and you have like a sliver of consciousness, and all your name, who you are, your origins, your opinions. Those are all bullshit that you put on this pure slate of consciousness.
That's kind of true. Buddhism, Buddhism says things that like make sense. Like Buddhism makes sense. This is like.
Yeah, and then this guy's talking about like who follows thoughts, and you're like, what are you saying?
Yeah, he gets
and
a
also
little lost
you could
in the
also
weeds.
say all of this without involving the Knights of the Round Table. I'm still not clear on why that had to happen. The thing is, this whole book. Here's what it is.
Yeah, the King Arthur shit is weird. The Merlin shit is insane.
It's unnecessary, basically.
The thing is, he's got like one point, and then that is like, you're nothing. Right? But he's just trying to stretch that out for as long as possible. So he's like, let's put King Arthur in there. Let's do that. Because he's really repeated the same thing. Like
I didn't really see him not following thoughts when he made $4 million from publishing this book. I didn't
follow thoughts. You can. You can follow thoughts pretty well. You follow through with your plan.
When they wrote they wrote you a check and it said Deepak Chopra. I don't think he was like, it's not really my name. It's not.
I do not believe. Yeah, I think names matter for cashing in those $1 million checks you made off the insecurities.
Yeah,
of the West.
why doesn't Deepak take his name off this book and see how well it sells?
Well, because then he wouldn't be a bastard. He would be a good person.
Yeah, that's the thing is these guys all just they go in there and like have no ego or no sense of self or do anything, and then they make millions of dollars, and you don't think his ego's affected a little bit.
I didn't see you shed your physical shell when you bought a mansion.
So he says the moment of you being just yourself is when you first wake up. You have no thoughts. Why would you want to go through your whole life like that?
Well, you do. No.
Yeah,
He's repeating the same thing like meditation. It's because like so your thoughts, right? You might be plagued with like worrying about the bills. You don't feel like you're a real man or something else.
Yeah.
Right. And those are just like thoughts. But the point is like, so you're plagued by all these thoughts, and those are what make your life bad. But when you wake up, like they say sleep on it, like when you're mad.
Yeah.
And then if you sleep and you wake up and you feel calm, that's because you're not thinking about anything. You're just like pure consciousness in that moment. And there's like truth to that. Like if you meditate, then you feel because it's just your thoughts that make you.
How does that help you though? Like ultimately, like if you can connect to those pure thoughts, like what?
Oh, because then you think about things clearly without like a filter. So if you like meditate a lot. And then basically the kind of like thought patterns. If you're depressed, that's because you have a fucked up thought pattern.
Yeah.
So basically, like something happens to you, you're like, I'm worthless. Nothing ever good's gonna happen. I'm gonna kill myself. Right? That's just a line of thoughts.
Yeah.
If you didn't have any thoughts, your baseline, place of being is generally like calmness, which is like kind of a form of happiness. So you might be a lot clearer and like just a better, calmer person and have like a better existence if you just did that.
It sounds like you and Deepak are kind of on the same level. Like you kind of know.
No, I've read the Buddhism, I meditated and stuff, and then this is like just.
But where's the link that goes that accessing that will make for a better life? I don't see that. Like that's a presupposition.
I kind of get that.
Really,
like,
you think that like
when you have
accessing
shitty thoughts, you got to calm down and be like, look, I'm not worthless.
Like,
I'm not this because
so you put the role. Let's say you put the role. You have the role of mother on you. Why isn't that role more enriching to your life? Why would you want to escape that role?
I think you're thinking above what I'm talking about, right? So if you're a mom, right, it's not that you need to get rid of that label. It's just the fact that like, okay, so this conversation, right? So if you're really engaging in the moment, you're there, you're present, you're really with the person you're talking to. Like I know you've probably walked through just the street. You're not on the street, right? You're thinking about some shit that happened 3 years ago you fucked up on, you worry about stuff later, and then your whole life, you never even have a life, right? Because you're just worried about stuff in the future and stuff in the past. Days fucking pass by, and then you have this idea, well, one day I'm going to accomplish everything I want and be happy, and then I'm going to live in the moment. But that's never going to fucking happen. You're just going to always be plagued by shit. You're going to always be miserable, and then it's basically that's why people buy this book. Is because
that makes sense. Same way you walk around downtown, you see a homeless guy, and it's so easy to like not dismiss like a person who's like sitting there suffering, because you're not actually sitting there and like looking at that and being like, oh, here is like a guy who's in front of me who like wants to eat. You just it's just like
an identity.
It's like a statue. It's not a thing because you're not like in the moment. You're not if you were really in the moment, like at all times,
you're a clearer, better person. Like, just if 100% of your effort is, because if I'm trying to accomplish any task, right? Let's say baseline, without trying to keep a healthy mindset, 30% of my brain's occupied on worrying about other shit, obsessing about other shit. But if 100% of me is like, I'm gonna record this podcast right now, I'm gonna
but who's to say
even if you're just talking with a coworker,
who's to say you would even record this podcast if you
I think you're thinking about it. Yeah,
I'm saying the same way that you like talk to a coworker and you don't really talk, you kind of just make small talk. But if you like were really engaged, you're like, I want to listen to what Jeff has to say today. He's like a person with thoughts and opinions, and you were actually in that can make your life better. We should write a book.
I don't know.
You ever heard about
I still don't feel the link where it can make your life better.
Okay, you ever heard about flow states?
No.
Okay, it's like a basketball player or a comedian, right? So if they're in a
actually, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
What are you talking about?
It's a creative place where, like, so if you're on stage and you're doing crowd work, it's going really well, you're riffing, you're not thinking about what you're doing, so you're just in it. And generally, when that's happening, that's like people perform the best. They're just in the moment, kind of performing, instead of judging what they're doing in real time and fucking it up. And so, like, rappers, basketball players, it's just a place of like being where it's like actually like, and you don't need to believe in metaphysical bullshit to do any of that.
You can only get to those flow states if you've practiced a lot beforehand.
Yeah, but I'm not saying don't have a name and lie in a field naked. I'm just I'm pretty much saying, like, maybe breathe in and out for 10 minutes a day.
But if you just breathed in and out for 10 minutes a day, like if your goal was to be a professional basketball player or whatever, like you need to put in the role, the work, and like, because you can't just breathe in and out 10 times a day.
No,
and then,
that's the point. Is it helps you like be able to live the whole. So if you meditate, right, then less of those you're kind of like in a clearer headspace, and you can attack things you're trying to do with a clear, better mind instead of being plagued by worries and shit like that.
I don't know. I'm not convinced. You two seem to.
That's because
you're not listening.
That's because
your
life is perfect.
No, I know what you're saying. There's like the link.
I'm not saying
there's a link between being in the present moment and that being a good thing, which I don't ascribe to.
You don't think that's a good thing? Have you not experienced that in your own life, just on a day to day?
No.
Let's say you're on a date with your girlfriend and you're actually just enjoying each other and you're with each other and you're not thinking about anything else and you're just really enjoying that person. And let's say on another date you're worried about your bills, things you need to worry about. You're not even thinking. You're not, when you say things, you're just saying them to get away.
Yeah, it's beyond a robot.
You don't know if your life would be better if every single moment you were in that present moment. Like there's.
I mean, dude,
the present moment is good when you experience it because you have these other things. But if every moment was like that, you don't like.
You're thinking about it like what you're trying to. You're saying what I'm saying is like never plan for anything. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
I'm not.
But it's like living like a dog. What's the quote from You've seen Louis, right?
Yeah.
The episode of Louis where he's asking the guy about like the advice with like the girl or whatever, and the guy has the dog, and he's like, you see this dog, and he's like, how many legs does that dog have? And he's like, 3. He's like, the answer is that dog has enough legs. He says, the only thing happier than a 3-legged dog is a 4-legged dog. And he's like, this dog, he said, he's not worried about what happened tomorrow. He's not worried about anything. He's just sitting, waiting to see what comes next. He's just in the moment at all times. That's basically what it's like. It's like living like a dog. But your dog's not sitting there like, oh, Cole was kind of mad at me yesterday. He just lives life.
Yeah, but the dog has no goal, no nothing.
Well, you could still have goals.
Yeah, you can still, but it's saying you take that and apply it to human life.
Why would you have goals though?
Take that and apply it to human life.
You're essentially you're taking what I'm saying. You're taking that to a radical extreme where it's like it's the point that. If you take this whole book, right, and you just boil it down to any practical advice or that whole line of thinking, it's just to be like, I want to be in a clear headspace where I can pursue my goals and be happier on a day to day. But you still live like a person. You still have goals.
If you have a bad day at work, if your goal, I mean, what are you, a software engineer or something? If your goal is to be the best software engineer you can be, and you go into work and you had a bad day at work Monday, you might go in Tuesday and be like, I don't even know if I can do my job. I might suck at this. I might get fired. I'm awful, yada, yada, yada. Instead of just going in and being like, I'm going to be good at my job today. Right? And it's that's the difference. When you have like all these things.
Yeah, but you have that thinking, I'm going to be good at my job today for other reasons besides just being in the present moment.
No. Being in the present moment isn't your fundamental like thing of like goal in life, but that is the best way to experience life. Do you understand? So it's not you do that just so you get through the stress of the day to day.
But I still don't get the link between being in the present moment is also the best way of experience life.
It 100% is. So you're saying that when you're walking around constantly thinking about the past and the future, that's better.
Yeah.
So have you never been in a place? You ever been present on stage?
It's because he has a perfect life. What, he has nothing to worry about.
No, he does. I don't think like this moment. Like if I was talking to you, or like it's just the difference between being neurotic and then actually just enjoying a thing. It's really it's not that complicated. You're thinking about it like, oh, you can't have goals, you can't do this, you can't have that. No, it's not. It's just as matter of.
I have goals because of anxieties, right? Like I would want to have money because I know what happens when you don't have money.
Yeah, but it's not.
He's saying maybe you just don't even think about that.
No, I'm not even saying that. You still have goals. You still think about your future on a grand sense. It's just you just don't. It's just you take it on a. You just try to meditate and like just so you can survive the day to day.
I don't know. We'll agree to this. I feel like this could go on for a while, but
I don't think you really understand what I'm trying to
No, I think we agree to disagree. I don't think
we should have picked a more ridiculous book because I think the last one was pretty easy to shit on. This one we gotta.
No, I feel like you can still because I don't know with what you're describing is actually the wizard way.
Oh yeah,
I think you're putting a lot of your own perception on the wizard way.
Deepak is kind of a genius. I mean, we had a full discussion on life and living in the moment. This is the point. We are wizards. In that, you see her in that moment, we were just in it. We were in the conversation. We weren't worrying about.
Because lesson 10, he introduces someone else besides the wizard. He introduces the shadow self.
What the hell is that?
It's interesting here at court, Merlin once remarked to Arthur after he became king, I didn't realize you mortals all held the same job. Do we? Asked Arthur. What might that be? Jail keeper, replied Merlin, refusing to say another word on the matter. In a wizard's eye, we are all jail keepers of our shadow selves. And,
what is it? Is it a good thing or a bad thing?
When has a shadow ever been a good?
But he says
when
it like it's
dark ever.
He says it like it's like a good thing. He says,
and he describes us as jail keepers, though.
In jail keep, but like we're
but what do we keep in jail?
Thing, right?
I think he's talking about like past. He's talking about like past experiences or something like that. You need to let go. That you hold on. That's like your shadow self. Like if you're an insecure prick today, it's because you were bullied when you were a kid, and you still keep around that idea of yourself that you're not really aware of, but it's totally true, and that kind of like is part of your psyche. I think I'm really doing my best to make this sound.
You're kind of making some of it like make sense.
I think that's what he's getting. It's like Aesop's fables, right? Where it's like talking about, might use like a bunch of bunnies, but I think that's pretty much what
he says. The shadow self is what we're too embarrassed or fearful to present in the light of day.
Yeah, I think it's just old insecurities.
So it's good stuff or bad stuff?
No, it's too embarrassing and fearful. Yeah, like
I mean, if what you're embarrassed to do is like shoot and kill people, it's bad, right?
Well, I think any old childhood insecurity you're probably embarrassed about on a fundamental
That's the problem with all the new age stuff is it's that they're like, I don't know, there are certain things that are like that are true, like shed some of your ego sometimes, but there's also certain things where it's like we act a certain way because we live in a fucking society and you have to interact with other people. There's like, certain things where it's like unleash anything that makes you feel
yeah. Because I know people really like that quote, like "Be the change you want to see in the world" by like Gandhi or whatever. But that could apply to like Hitler or like it's just not right because like Hitler did that. He wanted to kill a bunch of Jewish people, and that's how he wanted to change the world. It's not like an inherently good or bad like thing.
Well, it's supposed to be interpreted as like a good.
Why though? Because Gandhi said it?
He was pretty racist.
But like this is like the shadow self sounds like it could be good or bad, right?
Well, I think what he's getting at, right? He uses a jail
What
cell
I'm getting is
as
that
a metaphor, right? So obviously, probably not good, right? But he's just talking about if you're reading a self-help book, he's talking about the shadow self, something you've been carrying around. He's probably talking about some former trauma you have that you carry around in your personality today that doesn't really need to be there, that you're not even really aware is there, and you kind of just need to let go and move on with your life or deal with.
So what you're saying is you're it's hitting you. You're coming around.
I just start crying and talking about the Catholic Church. What if I just like stop being like being and start being a being of light halfway through the book? I am actually Deepak Chopra himself.
In this chapter, though, he says if humans could explode and kill people without fear of reprisal, most of them would.
What? Wait, what do you mean? First of all,
I don't agree with that statement at all. That is just a wrong statement.
What the
that
fuck?
That is negative.
Explode and kill people?
Nope. Do not buy into that.
Deepak gets into a weird Islam rant about halfway through.
I think you're projecting a little bit there, Deepak. I think, well, maybe that's how you feel, but listen, even if there wasn't a law, even if there wasn't a law in the book, I definitely don't think I'd be just running around murdering people.
Come on,
we didn't even say murder. He says if you could explode, so you would also die, right?
No, he just says if you could explode. He doesn't give a.
Just kill people, right?
And kill people without fear of reprisal. You would.
Oh, he's not saying like to actually like I thought the exploding is killing someone.
Yeah, no.
I gotta call my grandparents because this guy's just fucking out.
So his shadow self.
So again, is it a bad thing that he's saying? Is he saying to unleash the bad things? Is he saying to kill people? What's the book that the guy read when he went and shot JFK? Like this is like that.
That was like Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah, this is like that level of shit where people are gonna gleam out of this and be like, "Yeah, he told me to assassinate the vice president."
So the final lesson is about love. The purest knight to serve Arthur was Galahad, yet he had in common with the king that he was born out of wedlock. There was no stigma attached to the fact that Galahad was Lancelot's natural son. Yet when the day came for him to become the champion of a lady at court, Arthur shook his head and frowned. "I would not have you be the champion of any noble lady," Arthur declared. Galahad turned scarlet and stammered, "But my lord, every knight must serve some lady out of the purity of his love." "What do you know of love?" asked Arthur, his tone so direct that Galahad flushed twice as deeply. "If you are so eager to champion a lady, I will give you 3 to choose from." The king forthwith sent for Margaret, an old scrub woman with gray hair and warts on her nose. "Would you serve her out of..."
A little harsh on Margaret. Anyone notice what happened to an old scrub woman with warts on her nose? Maybe Margaret's got like, are we a little harsh on that? Margaret, an old whore that would never text me back and that broke my fucking heart.
Is that what how they called women back then? Just their job?
What do you mean back then? The book was written in like 2008.
Well, yeah.
It's not back then. This is a modern man sat down and wrote that about somebody.
That's the cook woman. That's the scrub woman. That's the clean woman. But yeah, so would you serve her out of love, fair knight? Arthur demanded. Galahad was bewildered. "I don't understand, my lord," he murmured. Arthur gave him a keen look and sent the woman away. "Bring in another," he commanded. This time a newborn baby girl was ushered in. "If you found Margaret too old and ugly to serve, what..."
We're getting into some territory here, Deepak.
"What about this lady? She is nobly born, and you must admit her beauty." It was certainly
a newborn baby.
Yeah.
Must admit her beauty.
What's going on? See, you can see the new age bullshit from a mile away, and it's just because you're attaching the label of old ugly lady, and you're attaching a label to old lady, but they're both like fucking beautiful ladies if you look within and who they are.
The law's label says that's 25 to life. That's the label.
It was certainly true that the baby was quite beautiful, but Galahad was even more confused. That was Deepak wrote that. No one was saying that.
I mean, that baby was pretty hot, but Galahad didn't really know how to do it.
Yeah. I brought you the hottest baby in the land. What's wrong, Galahad?
It's almost all ass. There's nothing better than a baby.
Jesus.
The only thing that's premature is my ejaculation.
Oh, man. We're edit that out.
He shook his head. The love you speak of is a hard master, Arthur said. He sent a third time for a lady, an Arabelle. A lovely 12-year-old girl entered. Galahad...
Cheer? Subway? Bro, like, guest wrote a lesson here?
Galahad looked at her and tried to control his anger. My lord, she is just a young maiden, and my half-sister, he said.
And my half-sister.
Jesus Christ.
Okay.
You asked for a lady to serve, Arthur said, and I have been generous enough to present you with 3. Now you must decide.
Well, these are some pretty... I guess if you really had to choose...
Horrific Sophie's choice. Now you must decide. Oh, Jesus.
Galahad looked stunned. Why do you mock me this way, he said. Arthur raised a hand, and in a moment the great hall was clear, leaving the two alone. I am not mocking you, he said. I am trying to show you something taught by my master Merlin. Galahad looked up.
What did Merlin teach you?
I really just want to have on the podcast the fact that your girlfriend came, you scared her away, and then got back to talking about Merlin with a fucking book in your hand and the microphone. You know what? Maybe you do need to live in the fucking present moment and go hang out with your fucking girlfriend, pathetic retard.
Oh, man.
Galahad looked up to see a softened expression on the king's face. My knights serve ladies out of love, they say, Arthur went on, and despite their vows to live chastely, more often than not they feel a passion for the ones they serve, do they not? Galahad nodded. And the more passionately attached they are to the ladies, the more their zeal to serve them, Arthur asked. The young knight nodded again. Merlin taught me another way to love.
Oh, my God. Horrifically groomed from birth.
Arthur said, consider the old woman, the baby, the young girl who is your sister. These are all manifestations of the feminine, and as these forms change, what you call love changes with them. When you say you are in love, what you're really saying is that an image you carry around inside has been satisfied. This is how attachment begins, and with attachment to an image, you may claim to love a woman, but let her betray you with another man and your love will turn to hatred? Why? Because your inner image has been defiled, and since it was that image you loved...
Because I pay the fucking rent. Maybe that... I don't know, my inner image has been defiled. Credit score has.
But that is not the end of the story. There is a secret to love. Merlin told me the secret many years ago, as I impart it to you.
The secret is don't tell your parents.
When you can love an old woman, a baby, and a young girl in the same way... You will be free to love beyond mere form. Then the essence of love, which is the universal force, will be unlocked inside you. You will be unattached, which is the silent summons that love must obey.
So, when I'm getting arrested by a state trooper in a couple of months...
This is the wizard way, sir.
I don't believe in labels or names. I didn't ask how old she was. I just figured a tree or the wind would tell me. Listen, I love her the same way I love a baby, the same way I love my grandma. The cop's like, he molested a baby and his own grandmother.
I asked the wind her age, and the wind said no age.
The wind said, go for it, bro. The wind said just right. So definitely not going to implement that one.
You don't think so?
Week. Probably not.
Implement it.
Yeah. Do you ever think you can get to a point where you can love a baby, a 12-year-old girl, and an old woman the same?
I think he doesn't mean like sexually.
Well, obviously, we all weren't thinking that he.
Well, yeah, I guess he means like, you know, just the fundamental force of love, like being nice and caring for somebody. But that's totally you love your girlfriend.
What does that have to
love
be?
Your grandma, I think.
Yeah.
What does it have to do with loving them all the same? Why would I not love them all the same way like that, anyways?
He's trying to be like, you should kind of like just fundamentally love, like the sake of love people, like really care for them fundamentally and they're deeply like who they are and that instead of like trying to.
But so he talks about you love your girlfriend. So when he talks about the false forms of love, he says, you know, it's false because you love her, but then when she cheats on another man, you get angry.
Yeah, I mean, didn't
Like,
buy
why-
into that. Didn't buy that. No, yeah,
Didn't buy into
you
that.
get mad because you love this person. You're taking care of her. You have a connection.
Because he's talking about some form of romantic love, right?
And then you go off and she cheats on you. Like, even if you were like, oh, I'm like, even if you're in the most emotionally healthy relationship, you'd get mad if your spouse. Yeah, that's some Deepak Chopra bullshit. I think he's just like, you get mad. I'm like, yeah, because that's the appropriate reaction to betrayal. That's.
Yeah, and also when he says,
I'm not defending. You're kind of asking me to listen. I'm just a man.
Oh,
I'm trying
no,
to do
this
what
is
I
just-
can here. You can't.
and he
What is
says,
saying? I
he
don't
says
really
the
get lesson.
ultimate love is when you're unattached. And then Arthur clarifies, isn't that simply indifference? Merlin shook his head. Indifference has no energy or life to it. A wizard's love is incredibly alive and flows with the energy of the cosmos.
Really, really hyping up these wizards a lot. You know, I don't see them doing anything. They're waving around knives. They're not feeding people. They're poisoning. And he's like, wizards. You know what wizards do? Why the fuck should I follow these wizards? They don't know anything. They don't. This guy stole a child. He's waving a knife around.
And he also says, when he's talking about love, he says, wizards do not see forms of love as higher or lower. That is the language of judgment, and wizards don't judge. If your enemy walks past you and insults you, Merlin said, that is an act of love.
No, it's not.
And you,
no, it's not.
There's just so many objectively things wrong with this book that I can't even.
And he says you shouldn't judge that more or less than other acts of love.
But that's
Yes,
not.
you can.
That's not an act of love.
To a wizard, it is.
So
When
your
someone murders my grandmother, that's not an act of love. That's
So,
not-
like-
I don't
so,
judge
like-
that the same way
It
as
says-
when my
So
So your
girlfriend
girlfriend, your girlfriend buying you a new car, and then your best, someone robbing you in the subway are both acts. According
Those are
to
the same
according
act.
to-
He says the impulse of love started in your enemy's heart only to be turned to hatred when it passed through the screens of memory.
That's not true. That's
Your past
a lie.
experiences causes the impulse of love to become warped or twisted as it rises to the surface. But make no mistake, any expression would be loving if you can meet it at its source.
The source. Okay, Jeffrey Dahmer
That's
brutally murdered and
it's-
ate 12 people.
Yeah,
At its source, that is love.
to a wizard at its source that's from love.
Well, I guess.
But his past experiences, maybe with his mom, probably with his mom, colored Dahmer's experiences. And
When you ate another human being's face,
He's-
that's an act of love.
It's all.
At its source, that is an act. I want you to look at me in the face and tell me that when he ate 13 people,
why
that
are you
was
looking at me to tell you? Look at Deepak. This is Merlin and Deepak. Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's just, I'm tired of. At a certain point, I just get tired of defending this man. Yeah, it's nonsense. I can't do this. Can't. So we're doing this for an hour. I can't. I don't know how to implement this on a day to day. Can we talk about? I've heard about 5 nonsensical fables. We debated.
You wanna go into-
whether being in the present moment, consciousness, whatever. The point is, what the fuck do me and Kwame take away from this?
I can't. I didn't. Like the
literally
last book,
we
the
literally
gentleman
spent the
shit, there
whole-
was like
it was so easy because it was so openly stupid. This is dumb on like 8 different levels.
This is like insanity.
And this-
you just
And I
read
have
me.
to- and I have to- I have to-
schizophrenia.
I have to jump
In a
into
book.
like a postmodern cerebral debate over what passage each means. You know what I mean? So I don't really know what to take away.
I
from it.
don't know.
At least the Bible had a section where it was like, "Don't be gay," and it was like kind of easy to know what to do. But this is just like I don't even know what the fuck he's saying.
think-
He's like, "Wizards are, but don't are."
I think strip everything of its labels. See if you can see the world like that.
But what does that even mean? So when I wake up and I want to wear and I need to grab my backpack
the same
to
way
go
again.
to work.
Well, I mean, you can apply that if it was like filtered through not a retard. You go to work and your boss is kind of an asshole, and you're like, my boss sucks. He's a shitty guy. Yada yada. But instead, see it as like, that's not my boss, Dave. That's just a guy, right? Who has his own insecurities. He has his own things he worries about. He has his own bills to pay. Maybe his wife cheats on him or she's fat or something. And it's like a whole, you know what I mean?
Equal crime.
He has his own thing that's going on.
Okay, so don't judge anybody, basically.
When a guy's being kind of a dick on the bus, you're like, this guy's a dick on the bus. Well, no, that's not just what he is. He's also like a guy who maybe, something bad happened to him the other day and he's in a bad mood and now he's being a dick on the bus.
All right. Well, okay, so don't apply any labels.
I guess.
Next.
Try to find the wizard within. That is something that's you guys are just gonna have to try that somehow. There's no
a scalpel or like how do I figure that out? You're gonna see me shirtless, drunk on a Friday, screaming, "I found him!"
So there's that. Finding the wizard within, stripping things of its label, treating each act towards you as an act of love. See if you can.
I don't know if I can do that.
You gotta. It's the wizard way.
That's the wizard way.
So if it's an act of hate, you got to recognize that at its source, it's actually an act of love. Be unattached.
I can do that, actually. I'm going to start doing that. There's basically a guy just being a dick. Treat everything that I do to you as an act of love. Like when I was late.
You're gonna explain your actions that way?
It was an act of love. Treat it at its source.
You showed up
it really does sound like someone who just hit his wife or something. Like, yeah. Started as an act of love, but then I remembered last night.
And then along the way, things got a little out of hand and a little in her face. Put my hand into her face. All right.
But yeah, you think...
see me as an abuser when you take the labels away.
All right. Yeah, I guess we'll try to do that. Next week, we'll see if we become mystical
What about
beings.
the love thing?
Honestly,
what about the love thing? What about are you going to... the children and the babies?
I guess we just have to try to love everybody the same way.
Yeah. And you guys will either... could become monsters or you could become great. I don't know. These advice seem to apply equally to both, right?
Yeah, I think it. Well, yes.
Well, there's glimmers of non-bullshit if you like, but you have to like.
You gotta really.
I mean, yeah, you gotta.
Go deep. These things are written to be so vague that you can read it and be like, apply your own like sense. So, yeah, that's what I'll do, and like
Yeah, so, basically it's so vague you end up doing what you wanted to do in the first place.
Yeah, you do all the work to interpret like his garbage that he put out.
Would you say that's a bad...
By the time you work hard interpreting this book, you'll be a better person because your work ethic and thought process... Like, if you can interpret this book into something meaningful, you can do anything.
Would you say he's a bad person for writing this kind of thing?
I think officially a bad you. You're just gonna go? Is it recording?
Yeah, I just I pressed record.
That's what I like about this podcast. We know you don't even know what's going on. I'm just like, is this like a thing someone would listen to? And you're like, yeah, I don't know. I've had it on for the last 4 hours.
Yeah. So coming back, we read The Way of the Wizard.
We got into it a little bit because I'm still kind of confused on what any of it actually meant whatsoever.
Yeah. Did it help?
It's still hard to be. Well, let me think. So it's been like a week thinking like without labels, and then I think immediately I was open to like a world of bliss I didn't even know possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So Deepak saved your life, basically.
I mean, I just think he showed me that it was already there because I was just essentially like a pure piece of consciousness. That no, really, I didn't. I have no even implement because you need a psychology. I mean, you like a fucking philosophy major just to decode whatever he's saying when he's just talking about some fable of like the wizard was throwing his knife in the air and you're like, what do I do? I lost my job. Right? Like, how do you actually implement any of that?
Yeah, that one was like a hard one to like actually have like some practical.
Oh, I think all of them were almost like, what's that even supposed to? I mean, it's just like he literally like took a word scrambler and just threw like weird old Buddhist text together and just made fucking nonsense out of it.
Yeah, I was talking to Kwame the other day, and he said it actually helped him a lot
He's not here right now. He's so enlightened. He's like, I'm done with the podcast. It's such a tedious mortal affair that.
Yeah.
So he was again 3.5 hours late because I assume he's floating up in the air.
No, well, time has no to a wizard.
He realized time is a mere construct, and he doesn't need to appear by our labels and our world and our rules. So he's just he lives in the moment, and he just walks out into the God's green earth and enjoys every minute of it.
And that moment is not here.
Yeah, that moment is not where anyone wants to be. That moment is not showing up to work on time. That moment is not, looking for an apartment.
Apparently, he has a sequel, Deepak.
He has like 14. No, Deepak, he's like a huge phenomenon. Like, I think like every bored soccer mom in America will just say crazy stuff like, well, you can just visualize whatever you want and it will happen. You're like, what?
So nothing came out of this?
I feel like, are you okay, Cole? I feel like that's going to be my life.
I wanted Deepak to save your life, kind of.
You want him Deepak to save my life?
Yeah, you spent so much time on the podcast arguing.
I was pretty pro Deepak.
Yeah, you were super.
I was pretty violently pro Deepak. I'm going to be honest. I was trying to say that he was saying some pretty insightful spiritual stuff. Well, now that I think about it more, because I was like, you know what? Who am I applying labels to things, right? I'm out here doing whatever. But when your bank account's at zero, there's no other way to label that. There's no good attitude I could put on. Not being able to get an Uber home. I can't really just be like, well, if I don't define this, it'll be better. So I mean. I think it's definitely something for someone that things are already going fine, and they can just pretend that they're tapped into like the same pool.
So you wouldn't recommend like placing this down in the lap of like a homeless person, the way of the wizard.
Like, can you imagine if you actually did that, like starving and you're like, without label. You label yourself as homeless. That's the problem.
Hey, you just gotta see past the homelessness.
That's just such a surface, superficial thing.
Yeah.
The thing is you have a home in the cosmic universe forever.
And also on page, I remember one of the pages, it says wizards have no home.
He's already halfway there. Yeah, he's already 100%.
He's more of a wizard than
anybody else, really. That's I think kind of if you did follow Deepak Chopra like to the dime, you would just be a lunatic homeless man.
Yeah,
where you're like, I live in the moment. I don't follow any labels. I do nothing. If that's like pure enlightenment, is essentially screaming at a bus stop.
And he also had that weird passage kind of about your shadow self, where he wasn't like super against, like just letting, like that weird like thing where he said if we could blow up and kill people, everyone.
Yeah, that was a very he didn't elaborate that at all, right? The rest of it's like just the wizard, you need to stop playing. He's like, also, if we could murder men, we'd just do it. And you're like, I don't know if you speak for. Are you okay, Deepak? Because it seems I feel like little bits of Deepak are like projected throughout the book.
Yeah. Did you notice any changes with just like relationships with people around you and stuff?
I've noticed people have stopped talking to me a lot less as I start saying I'm taking Deepak Chopra's advice. I notice most people just immediately start walking away from me as soon as I bring that up.
Career advance?
My career advance? Well, I stopped trying to put labels on the fact that I'm a temp. And I like to just think of myself as, just a free agent worker.
Yeah.
But no, they still avoid eye contact with me at the office. So...
Who then would you think is the intended audience? Because you were saying not like it's not for the highest of people either, right? It's not for the low.
Anything like it's not like a CEO's going to use this to like take over. It's for someone that is kind of like not doing anything. It's just like a stay-at-home mom or soccer mom, like people that hang out at the country club and like I read this new book. Well, they're just kind of blowing their husband's money, and it's like kind of a nice way for them to feel interesting or feel like they got this pool of knowledge.
Yeah,
but they're parenting now. They're not doing anything, right? You know how easy it is to not have any labels or anything like that. If you don't have like a job and you're just flying around.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Just out, I see a lot of people that. Like, I was talking to this one person, and a lot of people really, like, buy into that kind of stuff. I saw them, they were reading this book called Energy Healing.
Oh, yeah, that's just... I don't know what happened where we just believe that, like, alternative medicine and all this other stuff has more validity than it's like, we try... The stuff that works is medicine. That's, like, what we do. There's a reason...
Because Deepak's also on that, like, if you look at his...
Oh, they all are.
His,
They're shit. I mean, they're just geniuses because they just show. I mean, the thing is, if an ambulance shows up, it's not like a white girl in dreadlocks like rubbing stones and trying to be like, maybe you need to redefine what a coronary heart attack means in your life. You know. So I mean, it's just crazy. I never got
call
that.
for backup for more energy.
The defibrillator. She just rubs her 2 stones together and pushes it against her chest. No, it's completely insane. Like, wait, can you really imagine like being shot and then some person runs up with a bunch of acupuncture needles and they're like, wait, hold up. You just need to visualize yourself not bleeding to death.
Visualize the bullet out of your body.
Yeah, I don't. Really, that whole movement of like, this is the real, and then the government or whatever is trying to keep the real answer away. It's like, listen, there's no conspiracy on enlightenment or like true healing. It's like, if any of those things worked, they'd be patented and would be in every hospital.
Yeah, I've never actually tried alternative healing, so maybe I'm.
My grandma's actually, so she's pretty much who I'm talking. She's really into like Reiki.
Okay.
You know what that is?
Yeah, Shosha's grandma is really into that too.
Yeah. I guess everybody's grandma. It's a grandma that took acid in the 60s like once, and it's just ruined her. I mean, what Reiki is, it's essentially the energy thing.
Yeah.
So what that is like they believe that you can use energy to heal people. What it is my grandma will just rub her hands all over you until you're so uncomfortable you just pretend you're healed.
Okay, so that's what Shosha's grandma.
That's 100%. So she just, I mean, that's the thing about being into Reiki is you can kind of just say like blatantly schizophrenic things and no one will call you. Like my grandma would just be like, well, I just feel the energy all the time and I'm not like psychics, but I come out like 30-40%. We're like, all right, I mean, grandma, we're gonna lock you up if you keep.
Yeah, she would always say like, oh yeah, in this position I feel really good, and she like rubs her like hands across her body and it's like, this will heal it. I don't know.
I mean, literally I've had her do it in like actual injuries. Like,
oh really?
Like my brother like broke his ankle, like his horrific. And then my grandma like rushes her like, hold up, I'm going to heal it now. And starts rubbing her handle across his ankle, and he's just like, I can see the bone, you know? She's like, I can see your negative energy leaving the body. It's like, call the hospital.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I was really hoping it would work out for you.
Oh, you really had a lot invested? You sound pretty disappointed. I mean, if I had to be honest, you sound pretty depressed.
Well, I don't know. We read this, Deepak. You got nothing out of it. Kwame got even less out of it.
Yeah, I mean, he somehow got really just... He's not even here anymore. He's dead for all we know. Kwame is dead.
Deepak's a bust, then?
I mean, I think he's like I think what you need to take out of Deepak's book, it's pretty much a motivational guide, and like you could write if you're an Indian person, you could just write pseudo nonsense down, like literal makes no sense,
and no one can question
it, and then you will be a millionaire.
Yeah,
to make like that's what I'm motivated. Like if I in the last week just wanted to write a typescript called like The Manatee Within. Or whatever, and just had a bunch of fables about manatees. There'd be within like a couple months, someone at a bar reading about like, you know what the problem is you just really aren't accepting your inner manatee, and I'd be a millionaire, right? I'm like, this dude's a genius. You think he believes in it? Because if he took his own advice, he wouldn't be doing any of this shit.
No,
he's just a genius who realized that like all those gurus they always have like a gang of like 12 like white girls to follow them around until they realize that they're insane.
Or Oprah, right?
Yeah, Oprah's the same. I mean, yeah, it's really like I heard her. So they have a meditation app. Her and Oprah be saying stuff like, "I just visualize success and it happens." I'm like, I swear to God, she's probably sitting in her estate, closing her eyes, and then just being like, "I feel like the maid is gonna bring out my breakfast any moment," and then it's like, and there it is, you know.
I think the thing I got from it is that it's so vague that it's like. If something, it's kind of like when people ascribe like things to like Jesus.
Oh yeah.
You know, like if something good happens from it.
Yeah, you can totally apply anything that happens. You can totally apply it to.
Yeah, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's kind of similar to what Deepak showed. If something bad happens, it's so vague that it's like you can't like. Maybe I'm just following it wrong. You know, like I don't know.
No, it's kind of, but that's the genius of the business model, is to make it so vague. I don't have to say anything; they'll just fill in the lines. Yeah. I think final verdict is Deepak Chopra is a genius con man